Good afternoon. If we could have the people on Zoom give us a wave. It's still morning. Good morning. Welcome to the morning. I can't believe that. I think I had too many muffins. Or no muffins. I'm going delirious. All right. One of those. Whoop. Okay. Are we live on Zoom? Can they hear me? If you're on the Zoom, give us a hey, hello, if you can hear us on the Zoom. I can't hear anything, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's meant to be. Okay. All right. We are just going to get started, and those out in the networking, obviously doing big business deals, they can pop back in when they're ready. We are going to start with me anyway. Again, you'll be sick of hearing me by the end of the day. All right, I just wanted to briefly touch on this. I might come back to it later, to be honest, but I think this might be the only time I talk about it, maybe. Is it? In these million slides? Yep, no, I'll talk about it later. All right, we'll skip over it. Yes. Good idea. We have an amazing AV team helping us out today with a live stream on the Zoom. Now we could have, my suggestion from the digital solutions advisor was to stick my laptop here, blue tack a microphone here, and a camera over here. Apparently this was much better. Oh, I said I'd give advice. I didn't say I was good at it. Just kidding. I'm very, very good. All right. So obviously moving into this next session, for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, I'm assuming everyone here was pretty much at the session this morning, but for those who are on the Zoom, welcome, hello. Just to fill you in on what you missed this morning, we had some great speakers about work integrated learning programs. We're going to hear another one this afternoon, another option. We heard about different programs from federal government, including the Australian Business Licensing Information Service, Employability Checklist. If you haven't looked at it, I actually really love the federal government's business plan template. It's very good, actually. It always has been quite good. And state government have one as well. So if you're looking for those tools, and the contract tool was new to me, I hadn't seen that one before. So that's from business.gov.au. And we also had some speakers talking about... I'm going to lose my paper. We had some speakers talking about also employment skills and people being job ready for employment, and noting that we have a 4% unemployment rate right now, which sounds a lot, but actually it's very, very low. And just acknowledging that, and I would support this, having worked in this space before, there's a lot of really amazing candidates that you can hire. So we're going to listen to some more programs this afternoon that can help you hire. And not just that, but we're going to talk about different styles of hiring, different types of employment, different employment modes. Because we kind of know about work experience, which we sometimes call internships, which we now know is a workplace integrated learning program. And I want you guys to really take note of that. So if people who missed the session this morning, Ruz Fard from University of Southern Queensland mentioned Fair Work Australia, the federal government organisation that monitors national conditions and everything. They have rules around work experience. Because funnily enough, taking some workers for free sometimes can be seen as taking advantage and maybe exploiting people. Who knew? So we want to make sure if you get free workers on, there is a mutual benefit. And that is why doing it through an organised program is the way to do it. Now, I did hit up my insurance guy a couple of years back, and I said, if I bring in work experience people, because I was teaching all these students trying to get back in the workforce, and I said, well, I'll bring them in for some work experience. He had to dive deep to find the insurance policy to cover me for work experience at my organisation. When I had a conversation with Fair Work, they were very clear. They said, look, you basically can't have someone working for free in your business who theoretically is taking the job of a paid person. Right? Just let that settle with you. If you are offering a job in your business, it should be paid. If you are offering a student a work placement to marry up their study with their life skills and business skills, that's different. Yeah, goes for credit for their actual course. So it's really important to have that distinction there. And we have something that I just briefly want to touch on, which is the National Employment Standards. All right? But before I get onto that, I actually want to come back to this amazing team we've got. I've gotten a bit off track. Our audiovisual team, Beth and Daryl, they are here today from Darbeth Audiovisual. As I said, my little microphone setup was not acceptable, but theirs is amazing. So if you're watching on the Zoom, this is a professional setup we've got today, and I'd really invited Daryl up here to just graciously tell us about how it works, and if you guys are doing other events, things like that. How do we hire you, Daryl? How's it work?
Thanks, Rhonwyn. Yes, we are open for hire. And there's a fair bit of gap in the calendar at the moment because a lot of events just didn't happen over COVID, so they're now starting to come up. And if you're running something where you've got more than one person in front of the camera, that's your rule of thumb. More than one person in front of the camera, this is where you can help and really make things shine. Rhonwyn will send out our contact details along with everybody else. But Darbeth, darbeth.com.au is our website. And if you have info at Darbeth, that's a way that you can get through to us, but Rhonwyn will have our direct names on that. Now, we do a lot of interesting work with videos. And one of the things we focus on the information and education type areas. So if you have sort of a training type video you want to bring up, we can help with that. If you just want to get some information out about your services or your products or things like that, that's an area we can help with in that general area as well. But one thing that we are getting really excited about is we've been doing live streaming for a long time. Before COVID hit, we were live streaming. So we had everything in place. We're just going through right now a big upgrade. I think we're spending about $10,000-$15,000 on equipment just to keep things up and going. But one of the things we will do with that is we will take that live streaming techniques into the studio. And instead of putting that stream out, we will record it. So that will mean we will have you sitting there, we'll have a tight shot, we'll have a wide shot, we'll have your PowerPoints, we'll have you showing your products off at your bench, and we'll just do that all in sequence while you're talking. And by doing it that way and recording it instead of streaming it, you can walk out of an hour session with the studio with 2 or 3 short videos in your hand, which is going to save tremendously on the cost because we're not doing a full edit on them. For that, we're pitching that at around $449. So that's roughly about $150 a video if you can push that out. But wait, there's more. Block of flats and half of Tasmania. For anybody here that's involved in this seminar, if they get in contact with us pretty quick, we'll give you a 30% bonus discount on that. So take 30% off that normal price and come and talk to us. But I've been involved with tech stuff since the days of punch card computers. I've been involved with cameras since the black and white brownies. And that's all come together, and we are now able to do the sort of things which are going out. Anyway, I hope I haven't taken up too much time.
So podcasts? Recording video for podcasts?
Yes, if it's an informational, educational type thing, definitely.
YouTube explainer videos?
Definitely.
Sales videos?
Depends. If you want a Coca-Cola type ad, we're not the right people. But most people, if you just sort of promote what you've got, yes, we will do that.
Is anybody in the room from Coca-Cola? I think we're safe.
Yeah.
And did you know, and you can pass this to your clients, videos with a button have over 300% more conversion than text with a button.
Yep. You
can put that on a can and sell it, that's for sure. Daryl, thank you so much for joining us today and helping us with this today. I could not have done it without you. Thank you very much. All right. I'd like to get back a little bit to team building And of course, just a reminder, all the speakers' details will be sent out after this event. Don't worry about it now, relax, enjoy the muffins and the speaking. My name again, for those who are joining us for the first time today, is Rhonwyn Learner. I am a digital advisor for the Digital Solutions Program. I will mention that program a little bit later on. I know you guys, especially on Zoom, have been waiting a little bit for us to finish our teas and coffees because we were running a little bit late this morning. So let's just get into it. So just a reminder what I was saying before, the National Employment Standards. So this is one to take note of, all right? You're probably wondering, and this might be a mystery to you if you haven't hired before, there is a national conditions you need to take note of. So if you've been an employee before, you might have seen these before, right? Sounds familiar? Maximum weekly hours. I'm not sure I know that one, but it's on the to-do list. It's holidays, days, I don't know. Flexible working arrangements, paid leave conditions, public holidays. What are those? Just kidding. My boss is in the room. But also letting people know, what are the rules if you want to exit them from your business? And this is the real fear with hiring people, isn't it? That's why we all hire casual or some other arrangement to start, because we're so worried we get it wrong, and we someone who is smiling warmly and so wonderful in interview suddenly becomes our worst nightmare 3 months later. Yeah, that's the biggest fear, isn't it? How do we get rid of them? So that's what probation is for. And you can absolutely. So you just need to follow the conditions. And now I'm not speaking on behalf of Fair Work.gov.au today, but I contacted them and they were not able to come today. So they did send a resource to me, a PDF with all the programs to help employers, and I'm going to send that out after the session to everybody registered. But they also have, we had some lovely information from business.gov.au from AusIndustry before. Fairwork.gov.au also have like a mini course online for hiring employees, so it can take you through the steps. And also, if you're wondering how much to pay someone, that's fairwork.gov.au as well, okay? So that's federal government, obviously, when everything's .gov.au, and they have some amazing resources, again, so that you all do the right thing. That's what every organisation aims for here. We just want you to have what you need to do the right thing and get it right so you're not caught out, right? That's it. And that's why every organisation you talk to, they have guidance, they have advisors, they have mentors, they have whatever name you want to give it, they want to help you figure out this stuff. So what are the different types of employment? Full-time, part-time, casual, you've probably all heard of. Fixed term, so you might give someone a contract for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months or something and then choose to renew it, that sort of thing. Shift workers, I can't imagine, I don't know if there's any businesses in here, but shift workers, obviously, we usually see in professions like health, but also, heavy industry, mining, things like that. If you're like me, I run a couple of businesses, they're all around training and things like that. It's not a 24-hour job. God forbid it was a 24-hour job to do training. So I'm probably pretty lucky like that. Daily hire, weekly hire. So we in the industry, you usually hear that as temp workers. You've heard that expression, temp workers? So have you ever thought of just going to a recruitment agency, which is different to an employment agency, I'll explain in a sec, and say, hey, I need someone to do admin 1 day a week, or for 3 weeks straight to sort out my systems or something like that. And you do usually pay a little bit of a premium on the hourly wage, but you don't hire them directly. They're hired by the recruitment agency, and then you pay them a service fee, right? So there's all these different options you can look at for just getting little snippets of help when you need it, like a big, you've just taken on a big contract and you suddenly need someone for 6 months, but you're like, well, I don't want to take them on forever. I mean, you might in the end, you might absolutely love them and you want to keep them, but probation, of course, we've mentioned, so this idea of having a kind of get out of jail free clause in your contracts, it has to be in your contracts though. And I'll tell you a little bit of a scary story from I used to do recruitment consulting and a while ago, and we went and saw this accounting firm. I don't need to name the name, it's probably changed now anyway, and I wouldn't, but they were really struggling to hire someone, and they were giving us examples like there were typos in their CVs. They said they were there for 3 years and actually it was only 2.5. I mean, this was accuracy to the nail. And they gave me a story where, talking about probation, They had this great admin assistant, worked their front desk. Got to 3 months to the day, put her feet up on the desk and went, I'm in now. And they fired her that afternoon because she was on 6 months probation because they didn't like her attitude. So, you've got to remember that you've got to treat your staff with care and attention. I'm sure everybody here has worked a job at some point, even if it was like with family, and you went, oh my God, this is like hell. Like I feel like there's no love here. And in fact, I've worked with startups for 15 years, and that is one of the main reasons people start a business, because they just can't handle managers anymore. They either work in industry that's like, I don't want to say like hell, but it's pretty hot in there. Or, they're continually faced with these people who don't recognise them for their skills, never give them an opportunity for promotion, never give them any training and development, never treat them like a human, never say please and thank you. These are things that you can take from experiences you've had and remember that you are also going to be a boss. And you think about all those terrible things you had and go, I'm never going to do that. Just like we do with parenting, right? I'm never going to do that. And then you scream at your kids and think, oh no. Love these public holidays. All right, we're going to get on to the next speaker. We have the lovely Madeline Eagle from MRAEL. MRAEL is a very special organisation to us. They partner with us. They help us with our own trainees in the organisation. And they're also a major sponsor for today, so they're helping put on this event today. And thank you so much, Madeline. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. I just want to begin by also acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And also welcome all of you here and our Zoom visitors. Hello, Zoom visitors. MRAEL. What is MRAEL? It's nothing to do with railways, okay? So MRAEL is an acronym for Mackay, Regional Apprentice Employment Limited. We started like 35 odd years ago up in Mackay, generated a lot of work within the mines, and now we are supporting and assisting businesses, apprentices and trainees nationally across Australia. So we do have a one-stop shop of services under the MRAEL group, and they include, actually I've worked in all of them. We've got a senior trade school where they can begin halfway through year 10 and do a trade in 11 and 12. The registered training organisation, so we deliver a number of different training packages to businesses and trainees and apprentices. We also have an apprenticeship support network where where we do training contracts so that actual trainees can get registered, and also group training services. So my position is working within the group training section. We have two programs that we offer. One of them is called the Apprentice Employment Program. So this is where we are actually the legal employer, and we would host out an apprentice or a trainee, and we do the whole lot, actually. We do their payroll, workers' comp, superannuation. Sorry?
Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, tick, 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 tick. Sorry, I'm off base now, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, we have got the employment program where everything is done for you, and we invoice per fortnight, where we provide an on-cost for those services. One of the other services, which is very popular at the moment, and I'll talk about the funding in a moment, is the Apprentice Management Program. I keep saying apprentice because an apprentice includes apprentices and trainees, okay? So the Managed Program is very popular, where you are the legal employer, getting all the incentives, the support, the flexibility, but we manage everything from start to finish except for the payroll administration. So you're still the boss, you still control them. So what does that involve? What are we doing within these programs? Okay, so you come to me, you say, I've got Mary Jo who wants to get interested in, coming on board with our business. I say, right, would she like to do a traineeship or an apprenticeship? What is a traineeship or an apprenticeship? A traineeship or an apprenticeship is when you're earning and learning at the same time at your workplace during work time. Okay, it's not like going to TAFE at night. You're earning and learning while you're at the workplace. So I would organise the Apprenticeship Centre to come out and do a training contract so you can get registered with the government and tick off that registration for funding. Also, we would organise making sure that registration has occurred. We would then also be in touch with our training facility of their choice so that they can get enrolled. They need to be enrolled with a training organisation so they can fill out what's called a training plan. A training plan is a list of units that they're going to do in that actual training package. So you've got core units and then you've got some elective units. So the elective units are obviously going to be suiting your industry that you're working in, that business. And then we actually have a nominated field officer that comes out every 6 weeks to visit the workplace, speaking with the employer, but also speaking with the trainee or apprentice about how they're going, what they've been doing, what kind of support issues, making sure workplace health and safety is abided by. And then also, for the youth especially, we do performance appraisals. Sometimes they go a little bit off balance with their attention to detail and punctuality, coming back from their morning tea breaks. So I must give this one actually. So so every 3 months we do get down to the nitty gritty about safety, attention to detail, how is their theory going, and so on. So the employer is well looked after, and then also we did have a claiming system where you can actually complete claims, but now it's all changed. We now have to create a MyGov ID, and I did one for our director on the weekend for our own personal thing, and but anyway, I feel for the employers. They must have this new MyGov ID, which is essential so that they can start claiming their incentives. So as I said, you've got the employment program where everything is done, and you've got the managed program where you're still the employer, but you still got our service to assist and guide you all the way from start to finish. You focus on your business and we can help you because we're industry experts. So now is the time to strike. We have till June 30th to take advantage of this fantastic funding. It's called the Boosting Apprentice Commencement. So I have left outside this brochure here, which talks a little bit about it. Also about our programs on the next page, and then my business card on the back. I'm happy to come out and talk to you. I'm pretty simple when I talk. It's money in and money out for me, okay? I've had 2 businesses and I just want to know what I'm getting and what's going out. So, time to strike. What is this boosting funding about? It really started when we were struggling with the COVID that came upon us. So really, I'll talk about the boosting funding. The first 12 months is very important. Sorry, honey. No, thanks. The first 12 months is the most attractive boosting funding. So if you're going to, example, put on someone in a Certificate 3 in business, sort of streamlined to customer engagement, that is a 12-month duration traineeship, earning and learning at the same time. So you can finish it earlier, but I'd say just take advantage of that funding for the whole 12 months. Thank you, federal government. And they're going to pay 50% of the wage back to the business. Example, if someone is a business trainee, maybe they're getting 40,000 per year, you're looking at a $20,000 rebate that will come back from the federal government. That's a great incentive. The other thing is you're going to have someone doing a nationally recognised certificate and they are able to earn and learn at the same time, so they're gaining experience. The government didn't stop there though. They also offered more funding for someone who's going to do a duration of a 24-month and 36-month course. So that's more like leadership and management or something in HR or something in accounts, which would be a 24-month duration traineeship. And then you're getting into maybe apprenticeships like commercial cookery where it's 3 years. Hairdressing is 3 years. The employers can take advantage of up to $28,000 for the first year, second year up to $6,000, and third year up to $3,000. the first one I said up to 28,000. I'll just say that again because every quarter you get maximum pay of up to 7,000 per quarter. So if someone is going to earn 40,000, they'll get 20,000 back. If someone's going to earn 70,000, they can only claim the whole 28,000. Is everyone clear on that? And I can speak to you individually if you wish. When you're doing a traineeship or an apprenticeship, there are no casual workers. We have to be part-time, 15 hours or more, or full-time status. There's over 900 qualifications that you can choose from, and being industry experts, we can point you in the direction of which training provider goes with which industry. The other thing is no directors or partners can sign up to do a traineeship. Well, they can, but they won't get the federal funding. If they particularly want to upskill themselves, they would have to have a supervisor to oversee what they would like to do, but more importantly, they could tap into what's called the state funding. So some traineeship and apprenticeships have extra state funding, others don't. When I did forget to tell you about supervision. So when you're signing up a trainee or apprentice, you do have to have someone with that good industry experience or the actual qualification for a traineeship. So business, a bit more lenient, someone with, a very good resume with business skills. Carpentry, no, that person has to have the actual Certificate 3 in carpentry. Okay. Let me see. I'm just wondering if there's any questions that you'd like me to answer.
I find out with the traineeship or apprenticeships, in the trade side, that the students are eligible for the tool allowance.
For the tool allowance? Yeah. Certain trades are eligible for the tool allowance. They're the dirty trades. I always used to get taught, what's the difference between a traineeship and an apprenticeship? A traineeship is a clean trade, and an apprenticeship is a dirty trade, like engineering and carpentry and all those ones. So the tool allowance, are you talking about trade support loan or tool allowance?
Well, the trade support. The
trade support loan. I'll just go back one. Tool allowance, it used to be called Tools for Your Trade. They wiped that out and they included 23 cents in the hourly wage under Fair Work Awards. Yeah. The trade support loan is only offered to those dirty trades like commercial cookery, carpentry, engineering, automotive trades. So that needs to be applied by the actual apprentice themselves, and they, pardon me, a bit unlike a home loan, they can opt in and opt out whenever they want to. So it's around over $700 a month that they get. It's basically money for anything to get them to the front door for their apprenticeship. Okay, so it could be registration for their car, petrol for their car, some kind of rental assistance. It's just to get them to that front door so that they can attend work every day. With the trade support loan, if you're borrowing $20,000, because it's just over $20,000 that they can borrow over those 4 years, and they do complete their apprenticeship, they get a 20% discount back from the government. So if you're going to borrow the whole 20, you only have to pay 16 back. When do they pay it back? Yeah, so when they do have to, the trick is they must complete their apprenticeship. Okay, so if they're what was I going to say? Sorry, with the trade.
If they do the tool loan, who pays it back?
Yeah. Thanks, darling. So with the trade support loan, when they've finished their trade, the tax department will start bothering them and saying, hey, you need to be taxed a little bit differently just to pay, you need to pay it back. So nothing, it's great. It's great for the young ones because they need that money so that they can get money for tools. I mean, you're talking $1,500 for a pair of hairdressing clippers, and especially for my daughter, she was left-handed, so although she's finished that trade now. And then you've got welding helmets, they're like $1,200, so it is good, that money is good for them. In addition to the boosting wage, there are other federal incentives, but it's all down to an eligibility check, and an eligibility check is this this big. I used to be in the eligibility team, so there's many different scenarios where they could be actually eligible. The main one is, have they done any previous education before? If they've done a diploma or a degree, probably not get any funding, but it just depends. If they're at school, it could be a whole different kettle of fish. So come and see me. I'm happy to come out and see your workplace. I do want to add one more thing with the boosting apprenticeship commencements. We call it back, so I struck. It is open to new workers. What is a new worker? Do you have any staff that have been with you up to 3 months full-time or up to 12 months casual or part-time? They are considered or identified as a new worker. Of course, when they go into a traineeship, they can't be signed up casual, they have to transition to part-time. It is also offered to existing workers. So the existing workers pool falls into the line where you can sign someone up if they transition from casual to part-time or full-time. The other one is you can sign them up part-time into full-time. You've got to have that transition so that the government will allow you to tap into the boosting funding for the existing workers. If you're signing up anyone in the dirty trades, it is automatically, they'll get it anywhere regardless of how long they've been there. Okay, but do have a chat with me because there's many different scenarios and I don't want to bore you silly. But I want to thank you very much for having me today. I hope I didn't talk too much. Thank you.
I have some questions actually before you start. So just to clarify, is there a maximum amount of trainees you can have for a business?
It depends on supervision. So, and it gets back to the training provider. So the training provider will be the one who comes into the workplace and says, okay, you can have 3 trainees to that one supervisor. And it just depends what industry. Okay, this funding also is going to finish next month, June 30th. So we have to, yeah, it's already been extended 3 times. I can't see it being extended anymore.
Well, I think we've acknowledged already today, and a lot of organisations do, that we need to skill people on the job. Like, that is the gap, isn't it? The gap is that we need to skill people on the job. So surely I'm not an oracle and I can't speak for federal government, but surely some iteration's going to continue of this. But for this 50% wage subsidy, 30th of June. Okay, guys? And you can do it in combination with other things, can't you? Like some state ones and that? Should we leave that for later? We'll leave that for another time, off the record.
I think back to work will be...
Yeah, that's fine. Madeline, thank you so much. Round of applause for Madeline. Such amazing information. You see why we get them along. It's just such a great option, isn't it? Okay. Now we are going to talk a little bit more about internships. I wanted to hear from another organisation today that talks about internships, or what the modern internship looks like. So you can have some different ideas, different options. Obviously USQ earlier talked about the digital style, and now I'm going to invite Jeff Carter from the Griffith University. I will admit I went to Griffith, so I've got a bit of a soft spot, but I'd really love to hear what Jeff has to say about internships from their point of view. Thanks, Jeff.
I'd like to hear what I have to say about internships as well. I think carrying on from what we just heard, it's about skills and learning, and that's something that we at Griffith University do. Organisations like yourselves are the lifeblood, the backbone of the industrial economy that we're looking at in Australia right now, and the university is committed to increasing and developing relationships with all organisations, especially in our biggest catchment area, which is the Logan south side of Brisbane. So you will see in the next couple of years a lot more people like me coming to speak to you. And that is because the funding model for all universities in Australia is changing. And the changing funding model is really based on employability. So skills while learning, as we've heard this morning so many times, is going to be the golden thread that ties a lot of this stuff together. So the university, the part of the university that I represent, the Griffith Business School, has around about 12 to 14,000 students at any one trimester. And of those 12 to 14,000, we have about 200 to 300 students doing internships. So if we can go to the next slide, what are we doing? So what we do in these internships is we place students with you out in the workforce. A couple of things to really hit home. We do all the insurance. Clicker, love it. We do all the insurance, and there's absolutely no cost to you. The earlier speaker was talking about the Fair Work Act, and one of the key provisions of the Fair Work Act is to make sure that the insurance cover is based on the fact, or predicated on the fact, that the student is doing a 4-credit course. That means they have to do assignments, they have to do quizzes, exams, and they get a grade out of 7 at Griffith for their work with you guys. So obviously acknowledging country, traditional custodians on the land in which we are meeting, respect to elders past, present, and extends that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So it's a privilege, it's an honour to be here speaking with you this morning. Still morning? Just? Okay. Overview of the Griffith Business School. We're one of the biggest schools in the university. We've got a range of departments: accounting, finance, economics, international business, logistics and supply chain, HR, human resources, ER, employment resources, as well as marketing, social, digital, media management, all kinds of areas like that. We also look at international business, so we can assist with interns, with students in those kinds of areas. Our internships run every trimester. We operate 3 trimesters a year, so we are pretty much doing it all the time now. And we are a growing part of the university, pretty much predicated on the fact, as I said earlier, that our funding models are going to change and government funding in the future will be based on employment. So that's why you'll see people like us. Our students are available 1 to 2 days a week, and that depends on the number of credit points that they do. So a 10 credit point student, either an undergraduate doing a basic bachelor's degree or a postgraduate doing a master's degree, they'll be available to you 1 day a week for 12 weeks. And they will work under your supervision. They will do what you tell them to do. How do we ensure that? Well, we give you 10% of their trimester's grade. So you do a performance appraisal at the end on how they went. Did they appear? Did they work hard? Are you happy with them? You and I will have a chat, and then that percentage will go on to their assessment at the end of the trimester. So they have a lot invested in this. It's 10% is enough to do a grade break. So it's the difference between a distinction and a high distinction, or a distinction and a credit. We've found over long experience that this is by far the best way. It keeps the students engaged, plus it gives you, as supervisors, ownership of the product. Students are available at undergraduate or postgraduate level. We have master's students, so we've got Masters of Marketing, Masters of Accounting, Masters of Finance. We've got Masters of HR, Masters of Logistics and Supply Chain, as well as the same courses at bachelor's level. So you may have a more complex organisation, you may have a more demanding organisation, so we will talk and go through that and work together to find the best student that we can. And that's the 10 and 20 credit point course overview there. There's no cost, must be unpaid. You cannot pay our interns. That violates and invalidates the insurance cover. And under the very strict Fair Work Australia Act, that's going to be a really big problem for everybody. So please don't pay them. Multiple positions and multiple students in each role, you just don't get one intern. Our biggest cohort is marketing. So if you're interested in getting a student to help you with your marketing, digital marketing, social media marketing, any kind of market research, then that's very much our biggest cohort of students. Following that is accounting, finance, economics. So we have a lot of those sorts of students as well. And again, financial planning is becoming an increasingly large part of that accounting, finance, economics domain. Positions can be rolled. If you want to offer the same internship again, maybe build on the current intern's work and develop it. And that's what we really like, because as we all know, repeat customers, much easier to deal with. We get to know each other. We kind of get a feel for the kind of person that you want. And it's a great relationship that we're trying to build. For us at the university, it's all about relationships. It's all about respect, diversity, relationships, so that we can meet your needs as well as give the students this invaluable experience that you all offer. Fully covered by our insurance. You'll get a copy of that emailed to you, so you've got a copy of the insurance certificate, and that is incredibly important to us. We've never had a problem, we've never had an accident, students haven't done anything bad so far, but as we all know, public liability and making sure that we've got all that kind of insurance covered is incredibly important in what we do. They receive credit, and that is a part of the Fair Work Australia legislation, because they have to be doing unpaid for credit work. Undergraduate or postgraduate within our business school. So what we do, the intern will turn up on day one and they will say, "Hi, I'm the intern from Griffith University." And you will give them a schedule of work. You'll give them an outline of what you want them to do. You will give them some supervision, and they will work under your supervision. I teach most of the internships most of the year, so they also have to attend class, either online or face-to-face. And every week I do a round robin around the class and say, "How's the internship going? What are you learning? What are you doing?" And get a feel for the students. As you know, managing staff, and it's exactly the same for me, managing students, you do get a feel fairly quick for what they're doing and if things are going okay. So there's a big teaching component to what they do. I come from a background in psychology, so a lot of what I do is about leadership, about listening skills, about facilitation skills, and the sort of more structural processes of understanding the strategic nature of your business, and then where their role fits in, and then adding value to what they do. So it's a big part of that theoretical background that I give them, which translates immediately into hands-on kinds of experiences for them. So their job is not just to learn from you, their job is also to add value to your business by them giving you the most up-to-date information in terms of the research, in terms of the current literature, and that kind of thing. For me, coming from psychology, one of the maxims of psychology is that there's nothing as practical as a good theory. And that sounds a bit contradictory, but good theory put into practice is a very powerful tool. And that's what I try to give them every time they attend a class. Practical, hands-on skills. I know universities get canned a lot for being a little bit too theoretical in ivory tower, but for me, coming from where I've come from, and my background was in corrective services, it's all about giving them practical skills, and in turn, passing those practical skills onto you. In terms of the literature, not in terms of what you do. So I know you're going to be a lot better at the practical stuff than the students, but that's the kind of theme that I'm trying to get across. So, our registration process for trimester 2 is coming up reasonably quickly, Friday the 17th of June. We would like you to get registered. The contact details are there, and you can contact me anytime, and we'll get back to you very quickly. We've got a great team, and again, it's a very practical, hands-on sort of part of the university. The information on the form, what we do is kind of put an ad. You'll give us some information on the position that you've got. We put it onto our big database. The students have access to that database. That is the internship students only, and they select from that. We get a pool of students, 3 or 4, and then we do a rough cut of those particular students, because sometimes, bless them, we have students that have absolutely no background in that discipline area that want to work for you. So we've had accounting, finance and economics students last trimester look at marketing, which is a really cool company called Gilmore Space Technologies. They actually build rockets on the Gold Coast and launch satellites into space. I mean, how cool is that? And we'll have students from, say, accounting, finance, economics that think that's really cool, and they could do some marketing with absolutely no experience. Bless them. So we have to be gentle and that's true too. But if you're going to do market research, you probably need to know a little bit about theory and statistics. Yeah. So we do a rough cut. We'll send you a couple. You'll interview them. You'll talk to them either face-to-face or via Zoom or Teams, and you'll select what you want. And then they'll do an introduction, and then they'll come to work on the first day, and things will roll along. So, preference by students who've sent their resume and application letter, arrange an interview, etc., etc. I know we're pressed for time. Okay, so you've got my contact details. They'll be on the program. Get in touch. Happy to help. And again, it's about us working together and building the relationship, because that's the key part of what we want to do in the business school. That's a key part of what we want to do as a university. And you guys, backbone of what we do, are incredibly important to us. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff Carter, Griffith University Deputy Director for Work Integrated Learning. Another great program today. I don't know what I'm going to do with all these free staff and low-cost staff, and I'm just going to have my hands full. All right. I have the great pleasure of welcoming up a colleague of mine, Sarah Davis, from the Digital Solutions program. I must admit, I wouldn't have asked her if I didn't like her. I like her a lot. She's so lovely to work with. She's so knowledgeable. She builds websites for a living. She does social media and all that. And she has, I keep saying Sarah has built her own business on the back of virtual staff and using virtual staff. So I thought, who better than to come talk about it? So I'll hand over the microphone. You can have a few minutes. We'll just keep it to about 10. Yeah, I can do that. Thanks.
Hello. So I normally do the same job as Rhonwyn, and I'm normally talking about digital marketing, and I definitely need an intern. And so, as Rhonwyn says, my private work, I work freelance building websites, digital strategies, all sorts of things, and it's kind of progressed from there because of the Digital Solutions program. The businesses hear me go through their business, and then they say, but I can't afford an agency. And that's when I, having worked in agencies and having worked in marketing for so many years, have said to them, look, I think I can probably help you. I just need to get some resources myself. So I literally have a team. Not all of them are offshore. Some of them are in in Australia. I was going to say the UK, then I've lived here for 15 years. What's going on? So yes, they're all over the world basically, but you can have them in this country. So why go offshore? Cost, obvious main one. It is a lot cheaper. It also allows you to have multiple staff. So in my case, I might have a client that talks to me about search engine optimization. We, as part of the scheme, are there to empower them to understand what they need themselves, but we're not there to do it for them. So then it's about having... Am I talking too loud?
Just keep talking.
Okay. And then it's about having the resources to be able to supply that need. Now, at the moment, the grant's coming out tomorrow. I have been inundated with grant applications over the weekend, so I can't concentrate so much on content writing and things like that. So it basically, you will also get access to expert advice. So like, I'm not an expert in all areas, so I'm a broad marketing generalist and I cover all areas, but I don't actually specialise in certain things like off-page SEO. And so by having a team there that can give you advice, you've just got to find the right team. So, best locations. If you can stay in the country, stay in the country. There are teams in the country that do it, and they do it really cost effectively. And if anybody wants me to tell you what those teams are, I'm happy to do so. Then you can go offshore. Now, there are so many different countries that you can go to offshore. India, South Africa, America, Philippines, all over the place. I've even had a content writer in Bali. So you can choose to do that, but the main things you need to consider are A, how good is their level of English, because you want them to be able to, if they're going to be writing content for you, you want them to be able to understand what they're actually writing about. How far away are they? So I tend to usually pick Philippines because they are closer in time difference to us. There's only a 2-hour time difference. America's a little more tricky because of the time difference, and India certainly is more time. There's more of a time zone difference. So my top tip is try and find it in this country, but if you can't, then maybe look at the Philippines. How do you pick the right team? So one of the ways to do this is a well-known company called Upwork. There's also another one called Fiverr. I would avoid Fiverr because it's cheap and you get what you pay for. So if you're going to do this, I'd go to a company like Upwork if you're going offshore. And then I would be looking for their top-rated suppliers on there. So they're top rated, and then their level of a success. So anywhere sort of, they'll allow you to check. You can put some checks in there and tick what you want to achieve. I always say top rated, 80% success, and then I look at their profiles and see what they've done. And then I interview them like I would any other member of staff. I ask them to join a Zoom call. If they won't, I won't work with them. I want to know that I actually can talk to them and that they do speak fluent English and they understand, and I can talk to them about their portfolios. And I've now had a team of web developers in the Philippines for a year now who are amazing. They've grown with me. We now don't work via Upwork. I met them on Upwork, which gives you the safety as well, because when you go through Upwork, you actually load the funds in 3 stages. So they get a deposit, and then when you're got your first initial designs, you pay the intermediate payment, and then you only pay when you're happy. And if you're not happy, you can just say you're not happy, and you don't have to pay the balance. So that I thoroughly recommend. What kind of services do they offer? Anything, pretty much. Digital marketing is probably what they're most well known for, but you can have virtual assistants with admin charges. They can do sales for you, can do HR, they can do finance, or they can just do your website design, your social media, and so on. And it is a question of trialling them. So at the moment, I actually have about 5 different agencies I'm trialling, because I've got so many different skills that I keep being asked for. And of course, I work full-time doing this, so I can't actually do all of these things myself. I can just be there to support those and make sure that the client gets what they want. So I always want to test new suppliers and see what's working and what's not. The beauty of this, of course, is that because they're freelance, if you don't like it, well, you might have to pay, but then you have to you don't have to use them again. So, and you can find someone else. Tools. The way to actually get it working efficiently for you is to have a set of tools that you use. And we, as a team at Business Station, use tools like Asana. I've used Trello. They're all totally free to use, and they're just planning tools that help you to put all the project information into one place with everybody having access to. You can, like Rhonwyn mentioned earlier about security, you can just invite them to have access and you can take them out at any time if it's necessary. I also use Slack as a way of communicating. You can use Zoom, you can use Skype, but the beauty of Slack is it talks to other channels of communication, so Asana and so on, it will talk to. So you can build it in and it all kind of connects. The other beauty of Slack is that you actually talk, so you create a channel for each client or each job that you've got going, and you just communicate in that channel, so it keeps it really well organised. Security, LastPass, definitely recommend that. So I always say when I'm giving advice as a digital solutions advisor, never give away your user ID and password, ever. I've seen it too many times in agencies where people have changed something, locked you out. There's just too many things that can go wrong. Or they might be disgruntled and they do something they shouldn't. So only ever set someone up as a user, never give them the original access. Okay, I said I'd mention a few of the organisations you can use. I've already mentioned Upwork. If you just were to Google virtual assistants in Australia, virtual assistants around the world, you'll see a multitude of agencies, and thanks to COVID, there are more and more and more coming. Now, I actually have been working with a company recently that are based in Brisbane, but they buy the offshore. So there's a middleman. And as an example, and if anybody wants to see it, I've just had some business cards and a 2-page flyer designed for a client, $150. You're never going to get that. That's in Australia. But they then source it offshore, so the money still stays in this country. I think that's all I can pretty much tell you. If anybody else has any other questions, I can answer those for you.
Any questions? There you go. You said that some of the countries are sexist against women.
Yeah.
Then can you just give us 2 countries to avoid for women? I think we should general.
Yeah, I probably can't, just for... I will. Yeah, we'll take that one offline. I think you can possibly imagine anyway where it would be. Yeah. They're not necessarily sexist, it's just the culture is different, and therefore the way they can talk to you can be different. That's probably the way I should say it.
Please, round of applause for Sarah. What an amazing talk, virtual assistants. So everyone knows what a virtual assistant is. We did mention that, didn't we? Just checking. Wonderful. Thank you. Moving on from that, I have the pleasure of introducing Tracy Yule. And Tracy is a Principal Back to Work Employment Officer for the Queensland Government. And I'd really love her to talk about an actual funding program today because and this is even one I actually met Tracy before she was invited to speak here, because I was like, Tracy, can you tell me about this program, because I want to hire some staff and I've been pointed in your direction. So I'd really love you to shed some light on the Back to Work program and any other programs that Queensland Government are really there to help hire staff. That'd be great. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Tracy. I'm from Department of Employment, Small Business and Training. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we meet on this afternoon. I've got a clicker in the way. Can I just move this? So the Back to Work program, it's a state government funded program for employers to recruit new staff. So we will fund full-time positions, part-time positions, unfortunately no casual, because what we're trying to create is a sustainable position within your business and have long-term retention within your business, okay? So the Back to Work program, we have up to $20,000 for full-time positions for youth, 15 to 24-year-olds. As I said, part-time, 20 hours, full-time, 35 hours as a minimum. We also have, there's eligibility for the employer as well as the potential employee. So the eligibility for the employer is that they need to be located, or the job needs to be located in one of the eligible local government areas. So for South East Queensland, that's Ipswich, Logan, Scenic Rim, Somerset, Lockyer Valley and Moreton Bay, and then regionally from Moreton Bay up to far north Queensland. Okay, so that's for you as the employer. For the employee, they need to fit age and unemployment eligibility. So for example, the Youth Boost, which is 15 to 24-year-olds, they need to be unemployed for a minimum of 8 weeks. Okay, so if you're thinking about employing somebody and they've been unemployed for about 8, 9, 10 weeks and they're about 19 or 20 years of age, that's an example of fitting that unemployment criteria, okay? And for yourself, if you're in the Logan area, then that fits as well. So you would then employ that person, they would work for you for a minimum of, a maximum of 4 weeks. After that, you can then apply to the Back to Work program through an application for us. There's no guarantee of funding. There is an assessment process for you as the employer, and there are evidence documents that you do have to attach to those applications, okay, when you submit those. Anybody that is over the age of 25 that is not Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, has a disability, is 52 weeks unemployment minimum. Okay, so you're looking at long-term unemployed people. They may have been displaced through redundancy through COVID. They may also be having been a parent at home looking after their kids, or have had to care for somebody in their home for over that 12-month period. So those people that are looking to come back into that employment space, they've got the skills, they've got experience, so don't overlook that 52-week unemployment time frame as well. We also have up to 4, so employers can access up to 4 employees under the program. That's a very skinny shelf, isn't it?
That's okay, work with it.
So they can have up to 4 under the program, so you as an employer. The program is set over 12 months. So the first payment, I mentioned, once you do that first 4 weeks, you then have 12 weeks to submit your application to us. So once your application is approved, the first payment is released to you. Then the next payment is in a claim at the 26-week mark. So another claim goes in then. So then another one at the 52 weeks. So we're talking about retention of employees over this time. So what we're getting to is that once you've had an employee for that 12 months, it's highly unlikely that you are going to want to let them go after you've trained them. They've fitted in and they're now part of your business family. So we also have the small business support pool for any eligible employers that have had an approved application under Back to Work program. So that's an extra $2,000 to you as an employer to put towards maybe digital upgrades within your business that will help with the retention of that person ongoing even further. Okay, we mentioned before the state and federal government incentives aligning with each other. So under Back to Work program, if your person happens to be a trainee or an apprentice, then you can also access the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencement Funding and the Back to Work together. So imagine you have somebody who is 19 years of age, is starting an apprenticeship, and you've been able to access successfully the Back to Work youth funding of $20,000 for full time. You can also then look at the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements 50% wage subsidy as well. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? All right. The other ones that we have, we also have the small business short courses where there's leadership available at the moment. And that's a 1 hour to 2 hour online on the Back to Work website. You do not have to be an approved Back to Work employer to be able to access that one. Okay, so that's any employer can hop on the website, Back to Work, and go into the Effective Workplace Management Leadership and do that online course there. Okay, so we also have the Certificate 3 Guarantee Plus. So our job seeker officers around the state, as the same as us as employer officers, and that particular program provides eligible job seekers with funding to help source local jobs. Okay, so They might have done a specific Certificate 3, but not being able to access employment from that. A lot of people call it second chance funding, so they can then come to us and do a different Certificate 3 course where there's an industry skill shortage, and that then helps them go towards those jobs. We have a new part of the program that has commenced recently, which is the Growing Workforce Participation Fund. So this one aims to develop partnerships with industry to build longevity and sustainability in the workforce. And this is from $20,000 up to $200,000. So this is for businesses to partner with industry to bring those innovative ideas that everybody's had floating around in their heads to life. So you've all had those ideas and thought, how can I actually bring this to life? Where do I get the funding, and how do I, who do I partner with? So that may be something that could be of interest to you. All those program information is on the Back to Work website, and there's contact details on there as well for myself and the other employer officers and job seeker officers around the state. Other funding has been mentioned previously, and I'll just recap through Biz Queensland. So we've had the Business Basics Grant. That one's $5,000, and that actually opens tomorrow, so that's the one that everyone's been talking about and frantically doing applications for. The Business Growth Fund is up to $50,000, and that's another one that was mentioned that opens at the end of the month. And the Business Boost Grants are up to $15,000, and that's around about July, August, that one will be opening, so keep your eye out for that. All of that grant information is on Biz Queensland's website. Now, I've got flyers and postcards out on the table in the foyer if anyone wants to grab any of those, but also be around to answer any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Are there questions for Tracy? I got a bit of a tingle, the idea of getting someone out of work, trying to get back in, a mum who's been home for 10 years, someone who, has been caring for their parent for 6 years, someone who has moved location and just can't get a foothold in the market, and giving them an opportunity to come back into work, to upskill, and you get 50% subsidy from federal for back, and then another 11 to 20,000 from back to work. I mean, what have I got left? Super? Couple of thousand, maybe $1,000 a month at most. It's pretty affordable for a full-time worker. Yes, question? Can I repeat the math? All right. Yeah, very good. So we had MRAEL very clearly. Federal government, they can't talk about it because they got their 2 weeks notice and they've been locked out of the system before we send them home. Just kidding. But, back boosting apprenticeships commencement, back funding, 50% up to $28,000 per annum. That's the cap. Can be less if you pay them less. Then we couple it with state government funding, back to work, which part-time is $11,500, $11,250, and full-time is $15,000, and if they're a junior, I don't say junior, but if they're youth under 25, then that's $20,000. So you just have to pick. So if they're, like Tracy said, if they've only been unemployed for 8 to 10 weeks or whatever, 8 weeks plus, and they're a youth, you're looking at $48,000 per annum for a 54K salary.
Do you think, Tracy, that back to work program will extend to more than 4 people? Because that's 4 people, 4 business, and that's it, isn't it?
I think it's 5, isn't it?
4 per business for
Oh.
the life of the program. So it was reset on the 1st of July. Sorry.
That's right, so it gets reset.
The cap was reset on the 1st of July 2021 for businesses that had accessed the program successfully previously. So that cap had been reset. So 4 from the 1st of July for 4 years. No, that's for the life of the program from the 1st of July 2021.
Tracy, if they've got 2 ABNs?
It's per business, so 4 per business. Yeah.
So business is by the trading name or the ABN?
Can be by the ABN. some businesses will have one ABN and a couple of trade names. So as long as each business is individual, then it's 4 per business.
I feel like Tracy's going to have a lot of incoming questions, as will every speaker today. Thank you so much, Tracy. Thank you so much, honestly. Is everyone getting a tingle? Is everybody sitting here thinking, I wasn't going to hire anybody? But now I'm going to have an intern next semester. I'm going to have a VA do my admin because I hate that. And then I'm going to work towards getting a couple of trainees, as many as I can before end of June. Sorry? A cleaner. I like that. Hire them under the business, send them home. Excellent. All right. Now, just to recap, obviously we've gone through a lot of programs, funding, how to hire, digital tools to hire, how to prep your business. There's a lot of, we've covered a lot of people aspects and a lot of technical aspects together today. I feel like the next bit's going to be a little bit technical, but in a good way. I've invited I'm going to say gentlemen because they're all gentlemen here today. I believe they're all gentlemen. We've invited 3 gentlemen here today, Jim Marning, Gary Forbes, Damien Budd, all from the Queensland Revenue Office under Queensland Treasury. Now, we're talking about spending money to hire employees. They're going to go take you through some of the obligations around hiring employees when you get to certain benchmarks. Because when we are planning our workforce, we are planning ahead, and we don't want to necessarily just stop at one staff member. We want to keep going, don't we? We want to build an empire. So we want to make sure that we get the rules clear and what we're expecting. Now, I will say before the boys come up, I don't want to say boys, sorry, before the gentlemen come up, that there is one topic we haven't covered today, which is workplace health and safety, work cover and workers' insurance, things like that. We'll make sure we pop that in the next round. And if anybody, either in the live session or on the Zoom, wants information specifically around Queensland Government work cover insurances, things like that, please just reply to my email when I send everything out and I'll connect you with that organisation as well, all right? We only had so much time before lunch, what can I say? All right, guys, Gary and Damien are here to share what the Queensland Revenue Office has to share with you today. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name's Gary Forbes, and I'm with my colleagues. Jim's down the back, Jim Marning, and we've got Damien Budd here. So we're going to talk a bit about payroll tax, but before I start my presentation, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land which we're meeting and also pay our respects to their elders. So payroll tax. I feel like I'm going to be the damper on the room after that last speaker there from Tracy, but I just do want to make you aware of what payroll tax is, give you a bit of an overview of the tax, and just be aware of your obligations on when to register for tax, what payroll tax is all about. I'm going to talk about things like thresholds and high-level overview of the wages which make up those thresholds. I realise that Logan is a growing area and your businesses are always growing and expanding, and what I want to make sure of is that we make you aware of your obligations for payroll tax. So the things that are funding, the roads and services and things like that, that comes from our side, from the revenue that we collect. So it's important, I just want to make sure that everyone gets a good overview of the tax. Jim, Damien and I will be available afterwards to answer questions that you might have. So please come forward and speak to us about that if you need to. So we'll just move on there quickly. I think I've got the clicker here. There we go. So what is payroll tax? So we're talking a bit about state taxes, obviously. So we're not a federal tax. We're actually from the Queensland Revenue Office. So we look after things like land tax, the old stamp duty. It's actually transfer duty, but it's still called stamp duty. We also help people with grants. So people are buying their first home, things like that. We actually do assist the building industry as well with those grants and the clients. Part of our roles also is to educate clients like yourself. So we actually come out and do seminars. So Jim and I will go round to the regions and talk about payroll tax just to make people aware of their obligations. We have actually got a more detailed presentation coming up in Logan, probably by June-ish. I'm thinking it's in my schedule to come to Logan. I've got Yeronga coming up in May. Then we'll talk to Logan, I'll schedule that in June. So keep an eye out for that on the Business Queensland events page. If you subscribe to that, you'll see our seminars getting published on there. So please come along if you want more detailed information to that. And of course, our other function with QRO, Queensland Revenue Office, is to basically recover taxes and to make sure that we are investigating where we need to, and to make sure everyone's paying the right amount of tax. There's an equitable playing field in the business community. So, we do have a presence out there where we're doing audit investigations to make sure that people are doing the right thing. So that's where we come into us, Jim, Damien and I. So a little bit about, I just want to cover the overview of payroll tax. I want to talk a bit about the contractors. I'm going to hand over then to Damien, who's going to talk about grouping. Just a heads up on grouping. That's important to you if you're acquiring new businesses and you've got common directors and shareholders of one business, and the new business that you might be growing or expanding into, you might take over directorship, shareholding, common employees. Damien's going to outline those things to be aware of, because that might trick you over to the threshold. So when I talk about the thresholds for payroll tax incorporate grouping wages, okay? So these are group wages. So just be aware of the grouping provisions there. And of course, we'll give you a bit of an overview of our compliance activities as well. So what is payroll tax? It's basically a tax on the employer's payroll. So there is an obligation under the payroll tax legislation, and you can see in the purple frame there, that's the legislation which we administer. So it's the Payroll Tax Act and the Taxation Administration Act. We've also harmonised with other jurisdictions. So what that means is that payroll tax in Queensland, the thresholds and triggers are based on your Australia-wide wages. It's not Queensland wages. So if you're employing interstate or plan to employ interstate, please be mindful that the thresholds that I'm going to go through, they relate to interjurisdictional wages as well. Okay, so if you're employing in New South Wales and Queensland, the threshold to register and the deduction entitlement is based on the Australia-wide wages. If you're in that grouping situation, which I touched on earlier, the threshold to register is based on the group's Australia-wide wages. So it's not Queensland wages, it's not just your wages. If you're in a grouping situation where you've got common directors, shareholders, common employees, related bodies, corporate, all those things that trigger grouping, which Damien's going to talk about, that could put you into the threshold to register for payroll tax. Okay, so please be mindful of that. And with our legislation, each state has payroll tax. So even the territories, so Northern Territory and ACT, they have payroll tax legislation as well. So all the states have got together and have harmonised the key components of the legislation. So things like the grouping provisions, contractor provisions, things like that, they're standardised and harmonised across the jurisdictions. Where we're not harmonised on is rates and thresholds, okay? So I want to talk a bit about those right now. So the threshold for Queensland is basically based on a weekly Australia-wide amount. So this is where we have that point in time, or that line in the sand, where if the wages exceed $25,000 in a week, there is an obligation on the employer to register for that payroll tax in Queensland, okay? Every state and territory has a different rate and a different threshold, right? Some states have monthly threshold requirements. So if your wages go over a certain amount in a month, say in another jurisdiction, there is an obligation to register on the 7th of the next day. But ours is a weekly threshold. So that 25,000 amount, if we look at the annual amount of 1.3 million, divide that by 52 weeks, that's where you get your $25,000 from, right? So don't forget, that's Australia-wide taxable wages, okay? So you might be paying $10,000 in Queensland, you might be paying $16,000 in New South Wales. So that tips you over that week in the pay cycle. You need to then register, download the registration form and do it online through QRO online. It's all digitised, so there's no paperwork involved with that. It's just straight, here's the online form, fill that out, register for us, and we'll register and get you up and running. So once you're registered, there is an obligation there to lodge payroll tax returns, okay? So payroll tax returns are usually lodged monthly, and I'll talk a bit about that as well. And there's also an obligation to pay those returns and lodge by the 7th of each month, okay? Now, with the return, so that 25,000, just think of that as a point in time where you need to register for payroll tax. Once you are registered, you'll start lodging based on those monthly and annual thresholds. So everyone will be doing monthly returns, most employers. So we're going to talk a bit about it in a minute, but I just want to just cover there what the nexus rules are. So I mentioned there that payroll tax is a harmonised tax. So if you're employing interstate, how do you know which state to pay payroll tax in? Okay, so we've developed a set of rules which are harmonised across the other jurisdictions to make it easy. Otherwise, you've got that situation where if someone is working in multiple states in a month, the other state, like New South Wales and Queensland, New South Wales could lay claim to that tax, you know, so there's a potential double taxation, right? So we don't want that happening. So what we've done is introduce these nexus rules, and they're quite straightforward. So basically what you need to look at is, are the services performed in that jurisdiction in a month? Okay, so we're talking a month here. So if I'm working in New South Wales fully for the month, then my employer would need to declare my wages to New South Wales, right? But if I have an employee that's working across boundaries or borders in a month, that's when you need to have a look at these 4-tier tests, right? They're on our website, but essentially it's basically you start off at tier 1 is where the principal place of residence of the employee is. If it's in, say, an employee that works on the Gold Coast and they're crossing borders, like they might do a sales rep job on the Gold Coast, so they're working partway, north of Coolangatta. Partway during the month, they're working in Tweed Heads, Ballina, okay? So how do we know which state gets the payroll tax? So we look at their principal place of residence. That's the first tier test. And if they're basically living in Queensland, then Queensland would be entitled to the tax in that case. So they're on our website, the test. All you need to do is work your way down the test until you get a result. There's an interactive tool on our website as well, which will help you with that. So a little bit of a recap on what makes up our threshold. So the threshold of 25,000 a week, the annual threshold of 1.3 million, what is that made of? These are your taxable wage components, okay? So if you're remunerating your employees with any of these types of wages, they are counted as a taxable wage. You then add them up. If you hit the 25,000 a week threshold, then there's a liability there to potentially register and, get registered for payroll tax and then lodge your returns. Interestingly, on that one there, you can see down the bottom right-hand corner there, relevant contractors. So I'm going to talk a bit about those as well, but contractors were brought into the scope of the payroll tax legislation. Now, you might recall that a contractor that you engage with, the relationship is of principal and contractor, okay? But what we did when we harmonised our legislation in July 2008, contractors are now classified as deemed employees, okay? However, there are some good news story there. Not all contractors will be taxable, and I'll just quickly walk you through some of those as well. So normally, yes, we're taxing remuneration for services provided by employees. The only exception there is contractors can be a deemed employee. So we've basically overridden the common law by statute and brought in contractors there. So a little bit about the non-taxable wages. So they're the wages that previously were taxable. We don't tax everything, right? Now the good news is Tracy mentioned there about the traineeships, right? So we don't tax trainees and apprenticeships. They're exempt wages for us. There are some conditions around those, so they have to be registered under this piece of legislation up there, the Further Education and Training Act. So if the employee or trainee is registered under that act, those wages will be exempt, providing they're doing the work of a trainee or apprentice. Okay, that's the other condition. So you just make sure that they're doing that work. We also offer exemptions for JobKeeper, which has, as you know, ceased last year, but because we're involved with investigations and review matters going back 5 years, we can come across that, but they are exempt as well. And we do have some other exempt wages as well. Things like employees doing SES work or rural fire service, military leave. We also have leave for adoption, parental and surrogacy leave, so they're exempt as well. So a little bit about the types of employers. So this is I just want to lead into contractors on this side of things. So as you know, the evolving way the market is going with labour, it's getting very diverse now. So gone are the days where you have an employee-employee relationship. Now you've got contractors. We've even got employment agents working, right? So the employment agency arrangements are actually part of our legislation as well as a taxable wage. So that's where you've got a client, a worker, and then that worker's recruited from the employment agent, and you've got that model going on there. So there's more information on our website, but I just want to let you just have a look at that one about the contractor there. So previously you have that relationship of principal and contractor. That's now actually, if it's involving services and remuneration of those services to a contractor, they're potentially taxable. So I guess some of the things there to look at is, first of all, is that worker that's doing the work actually an employee at common law? So even though we do see this time to time from our audits, what happens is that the workers, called a contractor, they're engaged by the principal as a contractor, but what's happening in reality is that principal's got a lot of control over that worker, how they can direct them to do certain tasks at certain times. They might be paid an hourly rate. All these control tests are basically common law control tests that the courts have determined, and you could have a situation where a worker is in fact an employee at common law, even though they're a contractor. So just be mindful of these. So the good news is the ATO have got a great resource on how to classify a worker, whether or not they're an employee or a contractor. Have a look at that resource. We've also got some information on, if they're a contractor, what do you do then? So basically the contractors are taxable up until the point that you can get one of the 9 exemptions. So our exemptions are on the website, but these exemptions, if you go through them, you'll see that they relate to genuine independent contractors, right? So we are trying to make sure that the legislation is taxing the dependent contractors. So a genuine independent contractor will generally be able to the principal will generally be able to avail of one of the 9 exemptions, right? So with things like working less than 90 days in the financial year, services not ordinarily required by that business, they're on our website. Have a look at them, and if you've got any questions, Jim and I and Damien will be available afterwards to step you through that. So I'm going to hand over to Damo. He's going to talk a bit about grouping.
Okay, so with the grouping, there are multiple provisions. However, you only need to be grouped under one of those provisions to be grouped. So if you're related bodies corporate, that's enough. Likewise with common employees and common control. So I'll just run you through some examples. So with related bodies corporate, so as you can see, Red Proprietary Limited has more than 50% ownership of those 3 companies underneath. So therefore they are individually grouped with each of those 3 companies. And similarly, Purple is the holding company of Blue Proprietary Limited. So you can have red, purple and blue all forming one group. Red and purple are a group. Red and green can be a group, likewise with red and gold. And then we can also subsume them all into one big group for payroll tax. So between those 5 companies, if they pay $25,000 a week, then a payroll tax liability exists. For common employees, so you can see all of those little boxes represent employees. So for example, you can see purple, so whilst they're employed by their employer, you can see that they work across multiple entities, and therefore those 3 would be grouped for payroll tax purposes under shared employees. With common control, so this is our most common way that we find entities are grouped for payroll tax. So you can see there all of the directors individually own 33%. So to be grouped, a personal set of persons has to hold more than 50% of ownership to be deemed to have common control. So you can see John and Julie, as I said, they only have 33%. However, combined, they have 66%. So therefore, as a set of persons, they have controlling interest in ABC, they have controlling interest in XYZ, and therefore both of those companies are grouped for payroll tax as well. And that can be the same, so with shareholding as well, depending on what percentage they have, they can all be grouped in a similar sort of way. That's just a bit of a high-level overview of what's deemed for common control for those different sorts of entities. Important to note for discretionary trusts, any beneficiary is deemed to have controlling interest. So even if you have 5 beneficiaries, it's not 20% each. Each of them is deemed to have controlling interest. So that's how trusts can end up grouped majority of the time. But otherwise, it's just more than 50%. So for the voting power for directors and attached to the shares as well. So some shares might not have voting power, but the ones that do have voting power, so you can influence decisions made by the board and so forth, that's another way that entities get common control and can be grouped for payroll tax. So with our compliance programs at QRO, we're just trying to get it right from the start. So years ago, we would receive data sort of 3 and 4 years after the fact. So any liabilities that we came to businesses with would be 3 or 4 years old. They would end up therefore with a massive liability. There would be interest and so forth. Whereas now we're getting data, not quite in real time, but very soon after the fact, sort of within 12 months. And that enables you, we're bringing clients closer to the actual liability. So when a liability arises, rather than getting to you 3 or 4 years down the track, we're probably getting to you within 12 months. We take a single touch, multi-risk approach. So whilst we're dealing with you, we'll check to see if you've got any grouping, check to make sure that you've got an understanding of contractors. And then that way, we don't just get you registered based on normal wages and then come to you 2 years down the track with a grouping issue. We try to get everything in one go. And then that way, it'll make it easier for you to comply. And if something's easier, generally, you'd be more willing to do it. But the more complicated it gets, some people might push it to the back of their minds. In terms of the data that we get, so I'll draw your attention to sort of that second box there. So there's information sharing with ABR and ASIC, the ATO. So we're getting BAS annual returns, we get quarterly return data. That enables us to have approaching threshold campaigns. So you might not have a liability yet, but it looks like you might soon. So we send out a letter and have a bit of an education awareness, just so when that liability does come about, you're in a position to register for payroll. So we're getting income tax returns there as well. And we just do data matching to see the data that we're getting. Is that already in our system for a registered entity? So there might be a wage discrepancy. Or if those entities aren't in our system at all, then we start engaging with them to get them registered and paying their liabilities. Work cover is another one as well, so that's obviously the Queensland nexus. That's sort of one of the first boxes that we tick. Do you have a work cover policy? If so, then that generally represents employment. And then we just look at BAS and income tax return to get a bit of an idea on your Australia-wide wages. And yeah, so we've got, and the last box just again highlights how we bring you closer to the liability date. So liability might come about 30 June of this year. We might get in contact with you within 6 months as opposed to 3 and 4 years down the track. So that concludes our presentation today. Thank you very much for listening. I've just got a lot of links here, so I believe you're all getting the slide pack. And yeah, different ways to get in contact with us, always contactable via the 1300 number. There's videos on our YouTube channel in terms of how to register, and there's a wealth of information on our website as well.
Yeah, quick question. You talk about the weekly, monthly and annual.
Yep.
So then does it go to, similar to work cover, an annual review and then adjust it back or something if it was a once-off sort of spike in a monthly figure or something like that? Because you could have redundancy payouts or something like that. It's just a one-off thing.
Yep.
Particularly probably happened around COVID.
Yeah.
That wouldn't usually put that person in with that entity or whatever in a payroll tax.
Yeah.
Just rephrase the question and answer it for this one.
Yeah, sure. So we just had a question, I guess, about months where there's higher wages and might also lead into seasonal employers. So if you exceed that weekly threshold, that's the requirement to register for payroll tax. So you might have end of financial year bonuses coming up. So there might be a registration requirement at the end of that particular month. However, once we get to the end of the financial year, if you haven't exceeded the 1.3 million, for example, then anything you have paid will be refunded. And we also have different lodgement frequencies, such as half yearly. So if you have a big month, that's fine because you're only lodging twice per year, so in January for the first 6 months. So you might have a big month and then 5 smaller months. And then once we average that out, it turns out that you're below the, say, 650,000-ish for that first 6 months. And then there actually would be no liability.
Any other questions? Yes?
I'm in that position where I'm looking just to, set up trust and a few different things there. Going into that, where do you best suggest we start so that we set up in the right format to begin with?
I certainly can't give you any advice how to set up
And that's what I'm
companies and
the
so
lawyer,
forth.
That's fine.
Yeah, the lawyer, I guess the chartered accountant or accountant. So we can give information, not advice. Sorry.
Sorry. I can probably answer that, yeah. So if you're thinking about the structure of your business and then leading into, okay, well, when do I employ and what structure do I employ under and everything, the first point is the ato.gov.au have some great info and webinars on what the different structures are. Then you would talk to an accountant specifically about how it's going to affect you financially. Then I would also suggest you speak to a solicitor, which a lot of people don't do, to check for asset protection, legal obligations, that sort of thing. You need to have two sides of that coin. But ato.gov.au has some great intro into what all the different structures do and how they work.
Terrific, thank you.
Any other questions? Or any other comments? Gary?
Yeah, just one more.
Yes. Thank you, Damien.
So just tying in what Damien said about the grouping, just be mindful that in Queensland, with the grouping, the whole point of grouping was established to avoid wage splitting, right? So when entities come up to our threshold, what they would do is transfer employees. If we didn't have the grouping provisions, they were transferring employees off to new businesses, right? New entities. All the businesses are under our thresholds. So the whole point of grouping was to avoid that wage splitting scenario where people were legally minimising tax, right? So the grouping provisions came in about 3 years after the Payroll Tax Act came in. So what was happening now is when you're grouped with another business, and Damien went through the concepts there, what that means is only one member of the group claims deduction, right? Which is that based on that 1.3 million on an annualised basis, okay? And then, of course, the other group members they will lodge and pay payroll tax returns without the benefit of a deduction. And that's what grouping is all about. But we're here to answer any further questions that you might have, so please feel free to drop and see us afterwards.
Thank you, Gary. Round of applause, guys. I feel like a little side of my head just exploded. That was some great information, wasn't it? Obviously, that was a little bit technical, and I think Queensland Revenue Office did an amazing job to get that concise down to 15 minutes or so when it's usually a 2 hour, right? It's usually a 2 hour. So they did mention we're going to send out the slides. I am not intending to send out the slides from today's session, but you are going to get a link to the recording, right, which has the slides in them. If you would like to request the slides, especially ones that are this big, that sort of thing, first of all, I want to put in your mind that if this is really something that you feel you need to know, go to the 2 hour, yeah? Go to the 2 hour and learn the full thing, all right? This is supposed to be an introduction to let you know that these are things you need to be aware of, okay? And of course, their contact details will get sent out so you can follow up with questions, especially. Are there any questions on the Zoom, Sarah? Nope, their heads have exploded as well. All right, I really appreciate that. Look, there's probably one more last thing to cover, and then we're going to have some lunch. Is lunch coming out, I hope? Yes. Fabulous. I haven't mentioned it today. No one's mentioned it today, except for, no, that's not true. Federal government did mention it. Sarah mentioned it. We've mentioned it. Digital solutions. Does everybody here know what Digital Solutions Program is? There's a few, I know there's people in the room who are doing it. Yes, congratulations, you're a winner. I really want to impress on you, this is a federal government program, 7-hour package, and a little bit more, maybe sometimes. We're a little bit generous, aren't we? Yes. A little bit generous. Like, for instance, this was probably 7 hours. So what it is 2 parts. 3 1-hour mentoring sessions or advisory sessions. We can talk about websites, social media, data security, right? And one of the reasons I brought Queensland Revenue Office in here today is to remind you that there's some really fun stuff like social media and marketing, but there's also some really important stuff like tax and cybersecurity and legal obligations so we don't go to jail or we don't end up with a big fine, things like that, right? All very important, equally important, but sometimes we forget a little bit. We kind of go, oh, I'll do that later, don't we? And the later becomes much later, and then it becomes, ouch, that hurt a little bit, and that hurt a lot. So I want to impress on you that this program is by far one of the best value programs I've seen, other than free, just kidding, even better than free, because you have professional advisors. And I want to ask the team to come up if they can, or the Business Station team, if you can come to the front, including the customer support officers. And Mark again, if you like, have your smiling face, and Agatha, and Sarah Joy for a moment, just watch the cords. I just want to introduce the team who've been working with us today. Mark South, if you weren't here first thing in the morning, this is our Chief Operating Officer who we flew in from WA in a trunk in the back of a plane. Because we weren't sure of COVID, we just weren't sure. Agatha Dharma, our wonderful program manager, which I have to give a lot of thanks to. She kicks me up the backside all the time. In a good way, don't be late way. Sarah Davis, of course, you met before. We also have Julia, who's my personal assistant, and I probably need to work it harder. We've got Makala, Shara, and of course, so Sarah Joy has been monitoring our Zoom today. First time administrating Zoom, done a wonderful job. And I just really wanted to acknowledge their efforts today, but it's not just today. They're the ones calling you to make sure you book your appointments, making sure you get registered into workshops, making sure you get the notes and the links from today and everything else. And when you come in, like the advisors, and Kelby's out there doing a webinar in the next room right now, they all run their own businesses. And we have over 20 core advisors. They run digital marketing agencies, videography agencies, social media agencies every day of the week. And then they do this on top because they don't have sleep. And I really, you know what I mean? Like, there's just an amazing team. And I think I just really wanted to thank you guys for today and helping me with today because it was a massive effort. Thank you so much.
Now, let me steal this, of course. Now, the one person that we all want to thank you, of course, and we will not be here, including Mark and myself. I'm also based in Perth. And all of you and all the stakeholders, including the minister, is Rhonwyn Learner. Rhonwyn has worked so hard for this event. And when she actually designed this event, it is with all of you in mind. As a startup, what is the next stage? That's what the name of the event is. Next Stage Startup, right? Now we continue committing ourselves. Hey, Kelby, come up here. We're continuing in terms of committing ourselves to provide services for you. And Rhonwyn said it. We're so generous. 7 hours is only 7 hours. If you only need 7 hours, the workshops, group sessions, and all that, always available for you. And we want to deliver more. So, Rhonwyn, thank you. Great work, sleepless nights, I know, fantastic. But also on behalf of Business Station, of course, Mark South is with me. I would like to thank every one of you, the stakeholders, and everyone attending live in person today. City of Logan, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate it. Maddie from MRAEL, which is our friend and our collaborator. Thank you so much. Without the two of you, the major supporters of this event, we won't be here. And each one of you, congratulations for coming here. Congratulations for staying back. Now it's time for lunch. All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys. So just a reminder that all the speakers you saw today, they all run wonderful programs. I'm going to send you all that information. And yes, please stay. This is the networking part for those of you. Some people have only arrived in the afternoon and the speakers and the stakeholders are still here. Hit up the guys from Queensland Revenue Office with all your technical details. I'm sure they'd love to answer them. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful afternoon. We'll close the networking at 2, but there's heaps of lunch, so please eat up. Thank you so much.